First of all, guys, I do apologize if you hear any boom sounds. Those are going to be like notifications through email, text messaging, you name it, Instagram, Facebook, and all that. So I do apologize for that. And I apologize if you hear a big old boom. That's going to be my bank letting me know that something didn't go through due to low funds and all that. So just letting you know in advance. So let's get on with the video. Hey guys, welcome to the 145th edition. The 145th edition. That's right, we are 5 editions, episodes away from 150 of the Animated Girls Profile Confidential, but we're here right now at 145. And this one's going to be a little unique. You see, as I mentioned in the video, on-screen video that I did, talking about the fact that this is going to mark 10 years. That's right, 10 years this October since I started this little series of mine. And obviously, ironically, or whatever you want to, or however you want to look at it, basically in the 10-year anniversary, I'm also going to be celebrating my 150th episode edition of the series real soon, or at least uploading it and doing it real soon. The question is, who do I focus on? And there's a lot of choices still, believe it or not, so we'll see into that real soon. But this one is interesting because, as you can see on the screen, it involves a character I didn't even know about. Now, the one thing about YouTube is you have a lot of these channels that dedicate themselves, profit, non-profit, monetize, non-monetize. They dedicate themselves to basically putting up a compilation, of cartoons, basically like 2, 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, probably even 24 hours at most. A compilation block of cartoons from weekday afternoons, weekday mornings, Sunday mornings, and more specifically in this case, Saturday mornings. And it also ranges from, decades and eras and all that. Sometimes it's a mixture. Sometimes you get a mixture of cartoons from Saturday mornings of 70s, 80s, 90s, and that's it. Or you'll get a mixture of Sunday morning cartoons from 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Or even you'll get a mixture of Saturday morning cartoons from the 70s and 80s, or just the 80s and the 90s, or a mixture of all 3 decades, like I said earlier. And sometimes during these blocks, if you will, you will actually come across a series that you had no idea about. Now, of course, for some of us, the reason we didn't have no idea is because basically we were either too young at that time, or we weren't even born. And believe me when I say this, this character in this series that she's from, it came out 6 years or 5.5 years prior to when I was born. I was born in 1979. This series came out in 1973, 2 years before my older sister was born. So yeah, it has been over 52 years, or going to be 52 years, since Filmation created this series. And this series, believe it or not, was actually centered, or at least focused, on Australian rock star Rick Springfield, who did the opening theme. Actually, the opening theme was a song he did for the album, the soundtrack album that came out at that time and was re-released about 21 years ago on CD, and you could find it digitally as well, I believe. And basically, the song is actually pretty good. It's got a beat to it, there's no doubt. I think if you've heard of Rick Springfield, and who hasn't, a lot of his songs have that beat to where you're not sure of it at first, but then but as soon as you start hearing it, you're like, oh yeah, this is good. You can actually enjoy this song. You can actually dance to it or groove to it, if you will. Well, the series called Mission Magic was not only based on a song he created from one of his albums, but mainly for this series, I should say. But Mission Magic was a very unique series at the time because Filmation, had created a lot of series at that time based on some original IP ideas, or mainly they would also create some animated series, based on iconic primetime series as well. So they had their foot in the door of doing original IPs, like we would see later on in the 80s, but they'd also be known for adapting Saturday morning cartoons based on primetime evening sitcoms and shows and all that. They were always primarily known for that. True, they didn't share, not share, but true, they didn't, basically do this all the time. They weren't the only ones, I should say, that were known for doing this the entire time. They weren't. They weren't known for doing this the entire time. They weren't alone, I should say, in doing this. And, because of course you had Hanna-Barbera and you had Warner Brothers, they were taking their own stab at it as well. But Filmation was always primarily known as one of the leaders, one of the primary first, one of the first timers to put the name into a hat to have the opportunity to do these adaptations. And, Mission Magic apparently was a spin-off of one of those adaptations they did from the sitcoms. We all know about the Brady Bunch, right? That show you can still be seen on a lot of the Sinclair broadcast, not Sinclair, but a lot of the regular broadcasting stations out there, and even through certain streaming outlets as well, like Friendly and Philo. A very classic, iconic series, had a lot of spin-off films based on it, made-for-television spin-off films based on it, one of the more iconic being the Brady Christmas from the 80s. So it had a lot of, love given to it over time. And one of the bigger things that was given to it, or one of the more notable things given to it at that time in the 70s, was the spinoff known as the Brady Kids. And the Brady Kids, of course, are based on the sons and the daughters of the Bradys, of the father and the mother, if you will. And what's interesting, though, about it is that for some reason back in the 70s and late 60s and all that, but back around that time frame, there always seemed to be a reason. There always seemed to be like some kind of reasoning or excuse that they would come up with to turn an animated series based on a primetime sitcom featuring, one of the main cast being, a bunch of young teens or kids. One of the primary things that they would do when they would spin them off into animated series is they would try to base it off a concept that took place in one of the episodes and try to run with it. And we've seen this throughout. Now, sometimes it was justified because the cartoon that the franchise would be based on and everything, or the cartoon that would be you get the idea. The franchise the cartoon would be based on. It's early. It's Friday. It's about 10, 11. I'm still kind of waking up, believe it or not. And this is what happens, of course. Knowing me, you guys followed me for a long time. I'm not the kind that goes off of bullet points or scripts and all that. I'm just me. What you get, what you hear and what you see is what you get, if you will. Anyway, sometimes, like I said, the cartoons the cartoons based on the certain franchises or iconic IPs would be justified in going in this direction because of the fact that they are legit exactly what you see in real life. Because one of the common things Filmation and Hanna-Barbera and Warner Brothers and other studios would take part in is basically creating animated series based on musical acts. Whether it was the Beatles or the Osmonds or the Jackson 5 or the Partridge Family, you name it. If they were, I should say, popular enough, they would get a spin-off cartoon. They would get a spin-off Saturday morning cartoon focusing on not just adventures they'd go on and mysteries they would solve a la Scooby-Doo, which obviously most of these were inspired by, or at least, I guess you could say, inspired by and sort of like taking their own little take on it, if you will, putting their own little spin on it. Not only would they have those kind of adventures and mystery solving and all that, but they would also be a band. They would have songs. They would perform musical numbers and everything. And sometimes, depending on how you view it, they were indeed justified. They were justified in making those things happen. They were. But sometimes, like I said, the concept would be a little different. And what I mean by a little different is basically the concept of going in that direction would be based on one episode or two episodes that kind of focused in that area. And the Brady Bunch was not alone in this. The Brady Bunch was not alone in this situation because they did have like a few episodes. One primarily that I remember watching in reruns as a kid were the Brady kids, the sons and the daughters, created a band. Yeah, they created a band, and obviously it was a very popular and beloved episode to the point that I think it got maybe one or two more episodes based on it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But because it was so beloved and popular in the viewership numbers and ratings, it became obvious that the next step was to go the animation route and do a series based on that concept. And that's exactly what they did. They based, a series on that concept from that one specific episode. And because of that, here we have Mission Magic, which apparently was a spin-off of the Brady Kids. Don't know how it's a spin-off, guys, let me know. I'll have to look more into it later on. But if any of you have information, let me know. But with that said, here we have the characters. We get to her right now, and I do apologize if you hear any boom, boom, boom. That's going to be me putting in my code for my phone to unlock it so I can check the time of where we're at. Okay, we're about at 11 minutes and 20 seconds, so I do apologize. But it's because of the Brady Kids that we had the spin-off known as Mission Magic, and thus we had the character of Miss Tickle, voiced by Lola Fisher. That's right. Miss Tickle was a magical teacher in a school that headed up an after-school club called the Adventurers Club. Now, what was interesting about her, if you will, is that she kept her secret abilities and her contact with Rick Springfield, who played himself. He voiced himself in this. She would keep this all a secret from the principal. It's one of those situations to where when something unusual happens, and it's right in front of their eyes, they're unaware of it. And this is where I think one of those cases to where the principal may have tried to be aware of something, fishy going on, but wasn't. In the end. But basically, she was a magical teacher who, along with the kids, the teens in the Adventurers Club, basically would have communication messages, given to them via graphic phone. An old school, very old school record player, like a Vitaphone or something like that. It's basically a gramophone. That's not graphic, but gramophone. They would have Rick Springfield, through an enchanted gramophone, contact them to let them know where he was at, and where he needed them so they can go on the mission and also learn lessons, because you could tell that one of the primary things even back then was education. So you had characters sometimes throw in facts that you didn't need them to throw in there, but they did because of educational reasons. But anyway, Rick Springfield would contact Miss Tickle and her crew and basically tell them where he was at, where to meet him. And what Miss Tickle would do is she would go over to this this cat statue, this chimeric, cat statue she had, and she would use her magic to bring it to life. And how would she do this? She would reach into her purse and pull out a pin. She would say an enchantment of "Oh tut tut cat," something like that. Time to open the magic door. Time to draw the magic door. And what she would do is she would bring the cat to life, as she's doing this. Or she would bring the cat to life first, and then she would do the enchantment of "Oh tut tut cat," time to draw the magic door. And what she would do after bringing the cat to life, or bringing him to life while she's doing this, is she would basically draw a door on a blackboard. She would draw a magic door on a blackboard, which would open up and basically send her, or allow her to float into it. She would literally float in, along with the tut-tut cat and the owl, because they did have an owl join them later on. And after that, after she goes through the portal, you see this big old gust of magical wind or something like that go over towards the kids and pull them into the door with her. And then you'd get this kind of like psychedelic-like background of them traveling, in silhouette. Sometimes they would show the kids flying and everything, in the train. And I guess you can say in that trans-dimensional area they were in, or limbo they were in to travel, sometimes they would show the kids obviously up close, but most of the time it would be through silhouette. Now, when they would show them flying and everything, they were, up close, and most of the other time would be when they're flying through the sky, because yes, one of the means of getting around was Miss Tickle would use her magic to make them fly. She would make them fly and everything. So, yeah, that was her primary thing. That was her primary thing. She would basically, create a magical door by drawing it on a chalkboard or a blackboard. And basically it would open up, send her and the students, along with the cat and the owl, to whatever destination and even time, yes, time, that Rick Springfield needed them to meet him at. And, that's basically how it was for every episode. It was very popular song-wise, to where, the series got a soundtrack. It got a soundtrack, like I mentioned earlier. But this was mainly her deal. She would always use her magic skills to help solve the issues, as well as transport them to where they had to go. And sometimes, she wouldn't use her magic power. Sometimes she'd want them to learn, from what I'm understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, she'd want them to learn on their own of how to solve something. And they would. But there would be circumstances. Like there's one episode that came on this Saturday morning serials compilation this guy did on YouTube, or here on YouTube, if you watch it on YouTube, to where basically she would use her magic to fix a flat tire, because one of the students, forgot to put the jack back, forgot to put the car jack back, in the trunk of the car that Miss Tickle would drive them in. Now, what's interesting, though, is a lot of these students obviously are high school students. That's how they're depicted. Because one, why would a student say, hey, I forgot to put a jack back in the car? It doesn't make sense, right? So to me, a lot of these students she would teach would be high schoolers. And just before you say anything, they were all of ethnic background. They were, majority of them were ethnic background, and I'll explain that later on if I ever get an opportunity. They were all of ethnic background. They were. But be that as it may, though, long story short, Miss Tickle was a very, I guess you could say, popular character for the short run that the series had. And the reason she became a popular character then, and even now, I would assume, because obviously people do know about her, not just because of the internet and all that, but mainly I should say, not only, but mainly because of the DVD release. I think it's because when they look at Miss Tickle, she, like Sabrina, was one of the first Americanized, magical girls. Not like Sailor Moon, and all that, no. Or Melvillous Memlo and all that, no. We're talking magical girls as in good witch, good sorceress, and all that. She was one of the first, basically, for the modern era, for the generation Y, if you will. Generation, because, me, I'm a Gen Xer, right? So she was one of the first for the Gen Xers, if you will, the Gen W's, Gen W Xers, basically the Gen Xers, if you will. That's what she was. She was one of the first of the modern Gen Xer time. Correct me if I'm wrong there too. But I think that's why she's very I think that's why people, when you mention her, it takes them a moment, and even if they look online, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know who she is. And then they'll probably tell you, why they know they'll probably tell you more about her because of the fact that, like I said, they look at her as one of the first of the modern Gen Xer time frame. Now, of course, a lot of people will also look at her, know who she is, and they might even say, you know what? She reminds me of another teacher that had somewhat magical abilities. That would be Miss Frizzle. That's right, Miss Frizzle was kind of very similar, if you think about it, except she had a bus to help her out in those areas, as well as her sister, the other Miss Frizzle, same way. But we'll talk about them later. We'll talk about them later. But here though, I just want to focus on Miss Tickle, and basically, again, how she is, she's not as iconic, but she is basically a character that is the main focus, along with Rick and the students, but it's the main focus. You watch the title sequence of Mission Magic, and she is basically the primary focus in that title sequence because of who she is. She is basically a magical witch, a good witch with the magical abilities to basically, like I said, draw a board, or draw a door, magical door on a chalkboard or blackboard and send her and the kids through that board. So she has that. So she has set the tone in the Gen X time frame for modern magical girls, if you catch my drift. And obviously, it's also stated, because they do kind of alluded to this in one of the episodes that they have, that she comes from a long range of magical beings as well. Like her family, her aunts are magical as well. So anyway, that's basically all I can really say on Miss Tickle and everything, as well as kind of give you a little bit of a background, not too much. I'll probably get into it more later when I do some research on Mission Magic. But basically, I wanted to do Miss Tickle here because this is the one thing about Anime Girls Profile Confidential that I like. Just when you think, or just, not just you, but, watching, but just when just as I, doing the series, making the series, think, I've done as much as I can, there's more. There's more out there to explore. And just as you, that's what I was trying to say, think, oh, there's no more he can do. He's probably done most of them. When you think I'm done, here comes more. But anyway, though, guys, I just wanted to talk about this here in the 145th Animated Girls Profile Confidential. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. Like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, share the video. Also, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube. You can find me at all your favorite audio and video podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Audible from Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, Radio Public, Overcast, you name it. Wherever there's a podcast, you will find mine there as well. Also, you can find me at VENMO at BW Rosas. You can find me at Cash App and Venmo if you want to help support me there. You can find me at patreon.com at BW Rosas, where I have some new content up there under the $3 and $5 tier to check that out. I think you will enjoy it. Also, you can support me with the $1 tier tip as well if you would like. Also, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me over at rumble.com at BW Rosas, where I got some new content there as well that I'm not going to chance putting here on the YT due to either copyright reasons or the algorithm of the YT may get a little confused for something, that it's not. Also, you can find me at odyssey.com at bwroses-5. You can find me at divanart.com at bvw1979, inkbunny.net at bwroses. You can also, guys, find me at my Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. Also, find me over at twitch.tv and kick.com. I got to get those things up and running once again. Also, guys, you can follow me over at Twitter, aka x.com at bwroses, Blue Sky at bwroses, and you can find me over at TikTok at bwroses. But, guys, give me your thoughts overall. What do you know about Miss Tickle from Mission Magic? And until next time, guys, I will talk to you all later, but that's going to do it for the 145th edition of the Animated Girls Profile Confidential.